Hello and welcome to another episode of the Game Design Podcast. Once again, my name is Brad Carney and I'm the founder of Final Boss Entertainment, who recently developed Rack. If you're unfamiliar with Rack, just imagine if The Wind Waker was a first-person shooter and actually had nothing to do with Zelda, you'd have Rack. So today we're talking about tension. Basically, this is a feeling of fear or suspense that's brought about by the game, and that's eventually resolved either with triumph or with whatever it was you were so afraid of actually coming to fruition. If you've ever been in a situation in a game in which a powerful monster is bearing down on you and you're fearing for your life, well, your character's life, you're probably not in actual danger, you've experienced tension. It certainly doesn't have to be a high-danger situation with monsters. It can be something as simple as making a jump over a pit of death in a platformer, as we discussed in episode 3 of the podcast. It's not something unique to games, either. Virtually all movies have tension that escalates throughout the movie. The circumstances get worse and worse for the protagonists, and things all come together for the antagonists. This continues up until the climax of the movie, where tension is at its peak, where typically the tension is resolved with the protagonist coming out on top, either by blowing up the Death Star, or getting the girl, or sending the duck back to the duck dimension, or whatever. Hell, certain genres of movies are almost entirely built on tension. Dramas, mysteries, thriller, etc. And the same holds true when it comes to games, too. Because of their permanent death mechanic, this is something that I think roguelikes do a great job of. With the looming threat of losing all the progress you've made over the past hours, weeks, months, or even years with your character to a single mistake, every decision you make and action you take is wrought with tension. In Don't Starve, even something like the day-night cycle causes tension. If you're out in the wilderness away from a light source, when night falls, you're attacked mercilessly by monsters until you're killed, losing everything. This creates a ton of tension during dusk, where you've got to scramble to get a light source made, a fire, torch, lamp, which is not always easy. Not when there are giant goose-moose hybrids roaming the forest. Yeah, it's a pretty cool game. I like it a lot. And while the feeling of tension and release can be exhilarating for players, it can be a tricky thing to achieve for developers. For one, the players have to have some sort of emotional investment in the game or their characters. If the player could care less about the outcome of the game, they're not going to feel any kind of tension when put in a sticky situation, let alone joy or agony when the situation is resolved. There's also an element of difficulty, which is affected by the player's skill level. Even if a player is fully invested emotionally, if they're put in a situation that seems overwhelmingly difficult, they're probably not going to have a feeling of tension. They're more likely to feel hopeless and throw in the towel. If you've ever played a game of Team Deathmatch and are down by 30 frags with 10 seconds left, you know it's over. But the same goes for a situation that's too easy as well. If you're put in a situation that has high stakes, but the outcome is almost completely certain, you're prone to be bored very easily. I think a good game can adjust the difficulty to prevent players from declaring this is too boring or this is hopeless and checking out. For one, multiplayer games can matchmake, is that a word? Whatever, it is now. Players based on their skill level. That way both sides have a chance of winning, and all players have some sort of tension about losing, and will work towards resolving that. Single-player games can also achieve this through things like difficulty settings, and having difficulty that escalates. Something like Tetris, I think, is a great example of this. I think we're all at least somewhat familiar with Tetris, so I'm not going to bother explaining it fully, but when the game first starts off, the pieces descend slowly. If that's too easy for you, you can quickly whip through it to get to later levels that are a little more challenging. If not, you can carefully take your time and use the slow piece speed to your advantage. So, coming up, we'll once again be talking to friend of the show, Andrew Roznovsky, about tension, with a lot of the focus being on Heroes of the Storm, the new MOBA from Blizzard. And prior to our conversation, I hadn't checked out the game, which made hearing about it all the more interesting, but since then I have checked it out rather extensively, and I'll be back at the end to talk about it and wrap things up. Kind of like the genesis of this episode was, you telling me about how much you were enjoying Heart of the Storm and Heroes of the Storm. Sorry, You know, I get the HOTSs mixed up. You know, it's like Blizzard, I think, has a couple of them. You know, Heroes of the Storm and then Heart of the Swarm, the StarCraft 2 expansion, which is that out yet, or is that coming out?
Yeah, that's the one that was out. The one that's coming out is Legacy to the Void.
Okay, all right.
But yes, it's very silly.
Yeah, good job, Blizzard. But so like, to kind of get things started, like, why don't you tell the people out there who are not all that familiar with Heroes of the Storm, including me.
So Heroes of the Storm is what's called, it's in the genre called a MOBA, which is a multiplayer online battle arena. So
kind of a new genre, right?
Yeah. It's basically, if you look on Twitch, you know, you go to Twitch and, you know, go to the home screen and it's the most watched streams. It's almost always League of Legends, which League of Legends is the MOBA that everyone thinks of, that or Dota 2. And the history of MOBAs, funny enough, is MOBAs started way back when on Warcraft 3, which is another Blizzard product. And Warcraft 3 had they have a setting just like StarCraft did before, and it was called Use Map Settings, and it came with a pretty good map editor. And what they allowed you to do was you could go in and you could edit, a ton about the game and all this other stuff. So what people did was they made a game where you could control there were hero units in that game. It was a real-time strategy game like StarCraft was before it, but they introduced a hero mechanic.
The heroes were like the big new thing that Warcraft 3 introduced, right?
Exactly. So what people did was they took the heroes and then they made them controllable, and then like you would fight heroes to heroes. And the original Dota 1 was a Warcraft 3 use map setting that came huge. Yeah, Blizzard sold it off, and then Dota 2's big. League of Legends came out around, I think, in 2008 or 2009, maybe a little earlier than that. And needless to say, Blizzard's like, oh, wow, yeah, I guess we should, get into this, considering we made it originally, and now it's making a ton of money.
Yeah.
So, it's basically, the big esports game right now is League of Legends and Dota 2.
Yeah, and I know, like, Smite's up there, too. And, like, Smite, I know, is, like, trying to get involved in consoles.
Yeah, and Smite, that's a big one too. Heroes of the Storm is more of a newcomer on the block. Like, it was officially released at the beginning of June, but they've had a beta for it for a while. People might have seen the Heroes of the Dorm thing that they did on ESPN2, where they gave access to college teams, like teams of college kids. They gave access to the beta, and they, entered a tournament, and they broadcasted like the finals on ESPN. So a couple months back.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's basically whenever you hear the term esports, people almost immediately think of either League of Legends or Counter-Strike. So it's a pretty big deal. It's a pretty big genre these days.
Yeah, and it's also Evo. It's like I was kind of surprised to see like a couple weeks ago when that was like going on, like trending on Facebook. It's like the little like kind of subheading for that on Facebook was like esports tournament taking place in Las Vegas. And,
yeah, exactly.
It's like I know it's been like a whole thing about with like Evo and like them not wanting to participate in like official like esport, like MLG and
yeah.
It's like I don't feel like they don't think of themselves as esports, but I think those on the outside do kind of perceive that.
It's an FGC, we're too cool kind of thing. It is what it is.
Right.
It's like we don't want to be esports, but we want everything esports has to
exactly,
offer, basically. So
yeah. And it seems to be happening. It's like Evo has, really gotten huge over, I guess since like 2009 when like SF4 came out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and now you can really tell, with the Capcom Pro Tour having a huge bonus, and Sony basically funding, Street Fighter V, and they've basically come out and said it's like, this is we want to turn this into like, our esports commodity, basically.
Right.
So Capcom and Sony are like, yeah, let's do it, and hey, let's see where it takes us, basically.
You mentioned the beta for Heroes of the Storm.
Yeah.
I hope the beta for that went better than the beta for SF5. So.
Whoa, yeah. I was able to play a little bit, so yeah.
Well, yeah, if you were able to play, then it automatically went better. So.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. So one of the biggest differences between Heroes of the Storm and the other Dota, like Dota 2 and League of Legends, is League of Legends and Dota 2, the experience that you gain is per hero. It's singleized per hero. So like if Brad and I, he's playing someone, I'm playing someone, I'm doing more, I'm getting more, experience than him. I'll level up while he won't. So, we could go into a fight. I could be level 7 because I'm doing more, grinding and stuff in the lane while you are only like level 4, for example.
Sounds about right. I never do anything. So
I know. I figured that
I know you didn't want to say it, but yeah, we're all thinking it.
But in Heroes of the Storm, the experience is across the team. So you'll get like, when somebody gets to the team to level 2, everybody's on level 2, and then you go, you level up together. So okay. It's quicker access to the higher damaging stuff, and it makes the game a lot faster.
So is it like, can one character like kind of go like level up the team while everyone else kind of goes and does other things? Okay.
So they're like typically one of the hallmarks of the specialist class, like I was talking about earlier, is they're very good at soloing by themselves. Like you just kind of let them do their thing.
That's interesting.
They're gaining experience for the team while you might be harassing the other team or just like fending them off. And another thing about Heroes in comparison to the other ones, the other two, is Heroes is very much more map objective centric.
Okay.
So there'll be like the map objective is always going to aid you in destroying the other team, getting their core, which is their base, down to 0%. So
and
the different
that's
maps.
Still always the map objective, right? Destroying the base, or
yeah, it never changes. Yeah,
okay,
the only way you win is their base is at a 0%. Now there'll be like a map objective that can aid you in that. I'm trying to think of the most straightforward one. Well, maybe not the most straightforward one, but it's probably it's the first map or the earliest map that you can still play. What it's called Dragonshire, and there's 2 shrines at the bottom and the top of the middle of the map. And then what you'll do is you go, and it's kind of like capture the flag. You sit there for a second. There's a little timer. You do it, and then like your team captures it and you hold it. When you have both of those shrines, there's a shrine in the middle that has a statue that lights up, and then you have to send someone there. They right click on it, which does actions in that game. They sit there for a second, and then you're rewarded with this giant dragon. Like he's like a giant dragon that you can control. And then like the good thing about the dragon is he's pretty powerful. He has quite a bit of health, and like he's amazing at siege damage. So, the whole point is, he lets you take down the enemy structures a lot easier than if you didn't have them. So so that's one. Another one is it's called Blackheart's Bay, and the map objective in that is you have it's like these zombie pirates, I guess is the easiest way to explain it. And there's a ship in the middle of the map that you go and get these gold doubloons, and you go turn them in to this guy who's the pirate captain. And then if you turn in enough, the ship will they'll have their cannons, and then the ship will start bombarding the other team's bases and stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's like it's helping you do the damage for you. And like I said, there's eight maps. There's 8 different. Each map has its own unique map objective. So
and just real quick, it's like I would think like on the Dragonshire map, like running to that shrine. It's like I would think there would be all kinds of tension just heading to that shrine, because like couldn't the other team be there like trying to do the same thing? And it's like you don't know if there's going to be like some kind of skirmish once you get there. You don't know if they're going to have all 5 of their guys there, and then it's just you. Like there's just so much uncertainty there.
Yeah, I mean, so exactly, like, you can play Dragonshire a couple different ways. Like you can play it, you split 2 heroes each on top. So, you have 2 going for each shrine. Then you have a hero in the middle ready as soon as the shrines are activated for you to grab the dragon, and he gets it as soon as possible. Or, sometimes you'll see, I've played matches where the other team doesn't even try for the shrines. It just, they have all 5 heroes in the middle just to deny you 100% that you're never going to get it because you have to go get them. And yeah, I mean, it's, each map like I said, has a different objective. Some are smaller than the others, and personally, like I kind of like that aspect of Heroes because, like, I understand that a lot of people love League, but there's only one map you play on. Once you know it, you know it. But Heroes of the Storm is a lot more variety in the sense it's like, okay, yeah, we're playing on this map, so these heroes are more competitive on this map than they would be on this other map, or this build is a better build on map X than it is on Y, and stuff like that. So there's a little bit more variation.
Yeah,
so it's very interesting.
Right. It encourages you to take more things into consideration, I would think. So you got to consider the map you're playing on and the strengths and weaknesses of that map versus your build and all that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and that can be frustrating or fun to grind. It just depends on what you enjoy doing. So it's no problem.
Pretty much, yeah. So, like, another thing that I kind of mentioned in the intro was like the fact that like basically every movie like it kind of follows like this pattern of like you kind of start off with like the beginning and everything's all kind of nice and easy and all that, and then it's like you kind of have like this period of like escalating tension basically throughout the entirety of the movie, and then it all kind of reaches its peak at the climax, which happens like kind of right at the end, and then usually movies like kind of wrap things up fairly quickly because all the tension has been dissipated, and then what's the point anymore? But it's kind of like what you're describing in Heroes of the Storm. Like it sounds like it's pretty similar in terms of that. Like basically we're saying it's like you want to level up all your characters, and then it's like once everyone's all, then it's like you kind of go and engage the enemy in these kind of large scale battles.
Yes, yeah, it is. I mean, like, let's see. Generally,
but it's like, basically, it's like you don't know how the match is going to go up until that point, right?
No, you don't. And it's always I would say probably the first tense moment in most matches is when you first go out of your base and you're waiting to kill the little NPCs that are generated to get experience, and then that's like the first time that you see the other team's composition, right? If you're playing like in quick match, which is very casual, it's like, okay, it's like, oh, well, look, it's like, oh, we're playing against, this team comp, okay, yeah, we gotta think about this and that. A lot of that is dissipated in like the, basically like the ranked match version, which is called Hero League. But, I'd argue that in Hero League, the tension starts, when you see them picking, the way it works, just real quick for people who don't know, is in Hero League, it's a draft system of heroes. So like you see who they pick, like they'll pick, then you pick a hero, you pick a hero, they'll pick a hero, something like that. It lets you know who they're picking, and something that I guess it wasn't a thing until I never knew about it until I started doing it. But right. you can only have one instance of that hero in that match. So like you can't have like two Ryus to make a Street Fighter example. Like right. There can only be one instance of him out of the 10 players.
And it's like how relevant is that? Like, are there like tiers in this? So it's like, oh, he got the great hero. Yeah. Oh, damn.
It's definitely 100%. Yeah, okay. There's no question. Like is
the Butcher
if you look at
OP?
Not really.
Okay.
It was just like in everything. It's like, he came out and everyone's like, oh my God, he's so overpowered. And then everyone's just like, not really. His mechanic, is very, like, it's very good if you let him get going, but he's the kind of hero that if you can shut him down pretty early, he can't really do much. And, there was a new hero that came out last Tuesday, and, he's of the warrior class. And, of course, people were like, oh, my God. His mechanic, which is called a trait in that game, everybody has a unique trait. His trait is really – I think it's really interesting. Basically what happens when you die, when you die, the screen goes black a little bit, and you're able to look, and you have that timer, like I was saying, and then when the timer runs out, you respawn in your base, and then you have to go back to wherever you're going. His trait is when he dies, he turns into a ghost, and he just remains there. So he never has to go back to his base if he wants to, and he can sit there and he'll heal over time. Like he has like a spell and stuff that he can go like heal himself, and then when he's done healing, he just respawns exactly where you're at. So you never have to go back to the base. So you can be dead scouting the map, and they can't do anything about it. But they can't do anything to you. You can just sit there and scout.
But it's like, so can't they sit there where they killed you and wait for you to come back? And
yeah,
then...
so that's what a lot of people started doing.
Okay.
So they can do that. And there's a counter to that, which is there's a button that you can press at any time in the game where like it's I can't remember the time because they're like teleporting, so like of course they're sitting there and they have like an action that they do and it takes a timer, but you instantly go back to your base. Well, you don't instantly go back, it's like a 6-second timer, then you teleport back to your base. He can teleport anytime he's in ghost mode and they can't hit you, so because that's exactly what people were doing. It's like,
that sounds
okay,
really
well
good.
we're just like, okay, he's just gonna respawn, we'll just sit here when he comes back and kill him again,
right?
Because anytime he dies, he's giving them the full XP bonus for killing a hero.
Right.
So, when you were playing with people that are, the first couple of nights, like he'd have like 20 deaths, which is an insane amount of deaths in that game.
Right.
And like the XP that they're giving the other team's crazy. But yeah, his trait is really interesting. Like you can tell, like they spent a lot of time on him, and you can tell that some characters are older when it was like the alpha build, and they haven't been looked at in a long time, and they need to be reworked because they're very much more basic.
Yeah.
So, and they said they're going to rework them, but it's kind of it's a weird spot right now. So
it's it's like it's out, but it's not a beta anymore, even though it like kind of is, I guess.
Right. Like,
and Blizzard tends to do that a lot. It's like, it's like even after Diablo 3 came out, it's like months later they put the PvP in. And it's like, isn't this like a major feature that like should have been in the complete version of the game? But yeah, it's Blizzard.
It's like, and I mean, you got to think about it. Like League of Legends has been out for, like I said, over 8 years. It has tons and tons of it has like tons and tons of champions, which is what they're called in that game. It has like over 80.
Shouldn't it be Legends? I mean, it's League of Legends,
yeah, you'd
not
think
League
so,
of
but
Champions. Whatever.
You can take that up with Riot, not me. But yeah, like so, like the hero pool isn't very big in Heroes because, well, it's new and people complain about, well, there's not enough, there's not enough support, which there isn't, and all this other stuff. But it's going to take time to build up. But I mean, I like it. It's quite good.
And it's
for a filthy casual like me, I like it. So.
Yeah. But it's Blizzard. I mean, they're going to be in it for the long haul. So I would fully expect them to fully flesh out any characters and resolve any issues. So
definitely, no question about it. I'm not too worried about it. It's just that it's just like characters like Kerrigan, who are like one of the first heroes. She's very, you can tell, like they had a different idea of what the game was going to be when she was created, and now like they've gone a different direction, and they just haven't got back to her yet. So she's very, I can't. It's hard to explain. She's very strange. She desperately needs a rebalancing.
I'm trying to think if there's like and I don't fully follow the game, but like if there's like a Street Fighter example that's like that, I don't know, like maybe like Dalsy, maybe.
Yeah. See, I've been trying to think of it like a fighting game equivalent. I can't really think because it's they're constantly patching and evolving. Right. So like in Street Fighter, they'll release like a version. They used, like, Street Fighter 2 had a couple of iterations, and Street Fighter 4, and like everybody got it at least tweaked a little bit every time. Right. So,
but it's like they'll always like introduce like some new mechanic, and it's like for certain characters it's great, and some characters like it's terrible.
Okay, so here's the closest example that I can think of in a game like Marvel vs. Capcom 2. you had characters who could air dash, and they had like full screen projectiles. But then you had a character like Zangief from Street Fighter who just couldn't do any of those things, so he wasn't any good. Like that would be like the closest example. Like Kerrigan doesn't have access to like a lot of the better stuff, so she's very limited.
Right,
and she used to be a lot better until this recent patch. She's in the assassin type, which is the glass cannon style, which is like do a lot of damage quickly, but you can't take a lot of damage. She basically doesn't do a lot of damage, and she has no escapability, and she has very low health. So it's like, well, there's not really much, benefit of playing her.
So why are you playing her?
Oh, I don't. I played a lot with her early on.
Okay, all right.
And then, I was like, she's just an example I can give. I'm not going to bring up the character the hero I'm the most salty about being changed, but
is it Sonic?
No, well, that's a different game. But the character that I'm talking about in this game was probably nerfed even more than Sonic was. So they play completely differently than they did about a month ago.
That must be an ultra nerf.
It was big time, yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of Street Fighter, it's like in fighting games, like there is like. Those games, it's like there's an incredible amount of tension in those games too. It's like even like the central kind of basic game that like what's happening 99% of the time in Street Fighter is it's like footsies, which is like basically like the character is just like walking back and forth, kind of like in place, kind of trying to like space the other character out. So it's like basically they're trying to get like kind of an advantageous spacing position where it's like they can throw out a move that's likely to beat out what the other character has. But it's like basically it's like both people are kind of jockeying for position, and it's like there's all kinds of uncertainty and tons at stake. That goes on. It's like it's like the other person can do a move, in which case, like, are you going to be able to react to it in time? The other character could like jump in and do something, and it's like, you have to like DP or do some kind of anti-air move, in time to punish them. But it's like I mean, like for people who watched like Evo like 2-3 weeks ago, like I mean there's just so much just like even just like what's called the neutral game, like there's just so much tension there.
It really is. It's one of those things where you have to you were to bring it back to your point earlier, you have to kind of have an appreciation of the game to really really understand what's going on. But it's less than Street Fighter 4. I'll take some heat for this. It's less in Street Fighter 4 than it is in the older games like Third Strike, and definitely like Capcom versus SNK 2. But in those older games, there would be seconds in which the two characters would stand just outside where they could hit each other, moving back and forth, because the players were so they played so much, they were waiting on the other one to throw out a move to counter them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just like seeing that, you and I have played enough fighting games and everything, you develop an appreciation.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of tension, like the casual viewer just might see it and it's like, oh, they're just like moving back and forth. I don't really see the point, but it's just, once you see, once you've been on the receiving end of, a crazy, combo that kills you, and you're just like, okay, well, maybe I'm gonna hang back and stuff.
Yeah,
but
like for those who don't know, it's like kind of what's happening is like most of the time, like in a fighting game, like if you commit to doing something, usually that's going to open you up to some kind of counterattack. So what's actually happening is like both people are kind of like mutually afraid of each other, so it's they're afraid to do something because they think the other person will counter it. So it's like they have to be sneaky and kind of choose their moments. And
yes, you can definitely see that. You'll see, I mean, and of course this is people of higher skill level, they're more accomplished at the game. On the lower levels, you don't see it as much because you just don't have the experience. But
people just jump in and mash buttons.
Exactly, yeah. But you'll see. Oh yeah, don't get me wrong, it is fun. Yeah. You'll see, and it's nice. It it's nice now, especially with commentary, and streams and everything. Like, knowledgeable commentators can be like, yeah, oh yeah, he made that mistake because all this, and it helps learn the game. It helps people learn the game. But in fighting games, it's not a good idea to be crazy over aggressive in most situations.
Right.
I mean, I just have to say this for the record. You were saying that most of the time you're afraid to do anything because there's counters and stuff. Unless you're playing a character like Virgil, you just put spiral swords up, and you're just like, well, I'm just gonna do this, and you're just gonna sit there and block.
Yeah, just do stuff, and there's nothing they can. Basically, don't play a fair character, and then you don't have to worry about any of this.
There are certain games in which that there's a lot to be said that in a fighting game, if you can play a character that can basically remove the other player from actually playing the game,
right?
They're just sitting there watching you do.
We call it turning into a one-player game. So.
Exactly, yeah. So,
but
it's never fun to be on the receiving end of that. Right, but it is what it is.
But there's one thing that's in Street Fighter 4 and Marvel vs. Capcom 3 that I want to bring up, which really helps. Which really helps out, on the tension front, and that's basically some kind of comeback mechanic. So, like, for those who don't know, like in Street Fighter 4, it's like the more you get damaged, the more you have an ultra meter, or like a revenge meter that builds up, which basically lets you do an ultra, which is like, I guess, even more powerful than a super, I guess. Mm-hmm. But in that game, it's like you never really want to use your supers because you want to save that meter for EX moves. Anyway, but basically, it's a way, like, the more you've been damaged, the more the opponent's been beating you up, the more you have, like, this ability to kind of make a comeback that the other character doesn't have access to necessarily. And Marvel vs. Capcom 3, like, it has the same kind of thing. It has something called X Factor, which anyone who's played the game is intimately familiar with, but basically it's something you get to activate once a match, and this is a 3-on-3 game, and it becomes more powerful based on how few characters you have left. So if you activate it when you have 3 characters left, it's okay. It's pretty good, but it's stronger when one character's dead, and the absolute strongest when 2 characters are dead. And it's not uncommon at all to see the last character left activate X Factor and then rip through all 3 characters on the other team in the blink of an eye. Especially using Virgil. Anyway, but yeah, so it's if one of the things that, like, I really feel like kills tension is when, like, is basically momentum, and that's it's like when one team kind of seizes that, and then it's like the other team or character has, like, really no method of coming back. That's part of why that's one of my criticisms of, like, early arena shooters, like Quake and that kind of thing. It's like once one person, like, seizes control of the map, it's like the other person is really basically helpless, and it's like it's basically the outcome is basically decided at the beginning, and then there's, like, really no tension. It's just kind of like, okay, well, it's basically over, give up. He got the Megasphere first, or whatever. And that's also one of my criticisms of Marvel vs. Capcom 2. That's the predecessor to MVC3. It's like basically it's like if your first or second character dies, mail it in, pack it up. Like it's basically over. It's bad for the players. It's bad for the audience watching. It just removes all tension, and then it's like the game's kind of boring at that point.
I agree. I mean, there's 2 sides. There's 2 sides of that argument. And you'll see, like, there's been a lot of backlash from quote unquote the older generation, the FGC, just using them as an example. There's a lot of people who hate the revenge stuff, the ultra stuff in Street Fighter 4 that basically hate the comeback mechanic.
I thought everyone loves Street Fighter 4.
Well, except you and me, apparently.
Pretty much, yeah.
But no, and there's a lot of people who don't like X Factor. There's a lot of people who don't like comeback mechanics, and
usually these are top players, by the way, who don't want.
Yes.
Who I suspect don't want to remove any mechanics that would help those who they're beating down come back.
It's one of those things where the more experience and more time you put into things, the less you want to reduce randomness, and those inherently introduce as much randomness as you can get in a computer deterministic based game.
Right.
But I mean, you know, you and I played tons of Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and I can say, you know, Marvel 3 is more, you know, each match is more interesting on its own because it's very, you know, there's always a lot more pitfalls. There's a lot more tense moments.
Oh,
you
of
know,
course. It's like you have to stay on your feet all throughout the match. It's not like, okay, I got a lead, I can coast now. It's
Marvel 2 is very much like, Marvel 2 is just like, oh yeah, I'm up 3 characters to 1, all good.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's very, it was an older, you know, mentality. And just real quickly on this comeback mechanic, Heroes of the Storm actually has a pseudo comeback mechanic.
Oh, really?
And so what I mean by that is, like I was mentioning earlier, everybody has, you know, you gain experience as a team, and you know, there's a set level of experience that you get when you kill a enemy hero, and you know, I can't remember the scale. You know, the more you level up, the more experience you get from killing them. So it works out early on that in the early game, you actually get less experience gained killing a hero than you do the little NPCs. So there's no point to kill a hero because they respawn really quickly and you're not getting all that much experience. Mm-hmm. But as the game goes along, you gain more experience per hero kill. So what they've done is, let's say, the easiest example is, let's say the enemy team is level 17 and we're level 14, which is being down 3 levels is a very large deficit in that game.
I would think so.
But what happens is, what they've done is, you know, they recognize that your team is far behind the other. If you can, so what happens is you go and you kill them. You kill one of their heroes. You get a bigger XP boost for killing them. So what happens is, you know, if we can pick off 2 or 3 of their guys, like, we can catch up a level and a half just with that, doing that alone. So what happens is, you know, one of the biggest things is, like, if, and it's a false sense of security really, but if you're up a couple of levels, it's like, you know, the team I play with, we're always like, whatever you do, don't die, because if you die, we're giving them, you know, a huge experience. Right. And we have won games going into a 5-on-5 engagement where we were 2 levels down, and definitely by hook and by some crook, we got all 5 of them, and we made up. We were half a level ahead of them just after that engagement, which is a huge boost. Right? So, you know, that comeback mechanic is, you know, hey, you know, just be careful. You know, oh man, you know, we're 3 levels ahead. We can just, you know, own them for free. It's just like, if you know, they can get the team, they can get their combo right or whatever. You're not giving them you're screwing yourself. So it's kind of interesting.
So it's like, even though the team has one team has an advantage in that, you know, their levels are higher, there's still that tension, like, oh my god, I can't give the other team anything, otherwise they can come right back. And like
you can be 3 levels up and don't go solo. Right. You know, just don't go off on your own, because if you can be 3 levels up, but if it's 3 of their guys on you, you're going to lose that if they're, you know, fairly competent.
Right.
And then you just given them a huge amount of XP for you being a moron.
Right.
And then, you know, you're losing.
Your team rages at you and the salt flows.
I mean, it's, you know, admittedly, I did not know. We did not know that was a thing in the game until, you know, I was listening to a Heroes of the Storm podcast and they were talking about that. I'm like, oh, really? And then, you know, I search it and I was like, sure enough. I'm like, wow. So, and I was like, yeah, let's quit dying when we're ahead, because that would probably explain why we were like, how did we lose? We were above.
Right.
But, yeah, so there's
sounds
a
like bad conveyance.
In that.
Anyway.
But, you know, they probably would have said, oh, it's in beta. You know,
That's
we
true.
don't have that out yet. But yeah, I can't speak if Dota or LOL have that, but I mean, Heroes does have a little bit of a comeback mechanic, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
In the, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say too, in the way the map objectives work, is some map objectives are better for making a comeback than others. There's a couple of map objectives which, in my opinion, I'm sure a lot of people agree, that they favor the team that's winning already much more. They're very much like a snowball effect.
Right.
Like once it goes, it's really hard to stop on those maps. There, two in particular I can think of is one that's called Sky Temple.
The Quake 3 of maps. Anyway. Got to get my shots in anyway.
Well, I understand. There's 3 temples that you grab, and then when you grab them, it's kind of like the Dragonshire one. You have to sit there and control them. And when you're in control of them, they're shooting like lasers, which I don't know how much sense that makes, but they're shooting lasers out of the top of the temple at the other team's base.
Makes perfect sense. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. There's that one, and then the that pirate one I was talking about earlier with the cannons. Mm-hmm. Those 2 maps are very much, if you get the ball rolling on those and you control it's a big feeling of helplessness because it's very easy just to like, wow, we can't do anything because they have the map stuff so controlled. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Then there's other ones which aren't as heavily, the team that's down 2.5 levels just has just as good a chance as getting the map objective, and once they get it, it completely turns the tide. Mm-hmm. So it's very much, people get your map objectives. I don't know how many times I got to say that in chat. Get your damn map objectives.
And I mean, which of those would you, as a player, like rather play on? It's like, would you rather play in the one where it's like the objective is, like the outcome is basically sealed once one person gets rolling, or?
That's a great question.
Does it depend on which side of it you're on? Like if you're the better player, you just want to play on the map where it's like, hey, I got a lead, I win. Or is
I mean, there's a part of me that, like the old Marvel 2 me would definitely be like, yeah, just, that's good and everything and stuff. But I mean, ironically, the team I play with, the 4 other guys I play with, we tend to do better on the maps that do favor the snowball method. Like once you get going, you just start rolling over the other team. Right. We don't have as much success on the maps that are more
the maps with X factor.
Yeah, that would be the best way to describe it. There's one map that I hate. And I'm glad that there seems to be a lot of hate for it online too, which, take that what you will. It's Haunted Mines, and I hate that map. And I like there's a great website called HOTS HOTS logs.com that you can upload your replays and everything. And it's just, if you love statistics, you'll love this website. It breaks down everything. It's great. And like it has my win-loss, and like my win-loss percentage on that map is horrible because I don't I guess our team just isn't very good on that map. Mm-hmm. It goes back to what I was talking about earlier, the heroes that you pick, some heroes are better on one style map than the other map. And a lot of the heroes that me and my friends play are weaker on Haunted Mines than they are on the other maps, mm-hmm. because, there's several different factors. Haunted Mines is a lot smaller map than most of the other maps. And it's actually 2 mini maps put together because there's a mines part, which is, told in the name. Like you go underground and then you're in the mines. So it's a lot of small close quarter stuff.
Right.
And we tend to play a little bit more slower characters that are also a little bit bigger too. So they're not as maneuverable. So we can get stuck in bad spots and we get blown up.
I see.
And I don't like that map,
mm-hmm.
but there was about a month ago, they were trying something where they took all the maps out of rotation. So you won't play on them. And Haunted Mines was one of the ones they took out, and I love that week. Blizzard, if you're listening, which I know you are, please remove that map from the game. Remove that and remove Nova, Chen, and Lily. Thank you. Okay, I've gotten my piece because Nova is. I don't have a problem.
If he's as bad as Nova in Marvel 3, then I hate him. So.
It's a she.
Oh, she. Okay.
She is like there. It's like one of the. I would say it's one of the running memes, like Dante sucks kind of thing. Like it's like equivalent to
Dante
Nova.
does not suck. Ugh.
But Chen and Lily are 2 pandas from World of Warcraft.
Given the names, this should not surprise me at all.
Chen is just. I'm not sure what he adds to the game. Like he's completely worthless. Like there's routinely threads. It's like, can Blizzard fix him or just like remove him from the game? Cause it's not a point to him. It's bad, but
yeah.
Yeah, please remove those 3 heroes, and please give us a StarCraft warrior. So that's my appeal to That's my appeal to Blizzard.
I'm sure it's coming next update.
Oh well, I already know
Obviously, everyone from Blizzard are all avid listeners of the podcast. So.
Well, I mean, they know how much they know how much you and I play. We've put countless hours into WoW, so
that's right. Yeah,
I can safely say you and I are probably like 2 of 3 people in America who've logged a single hour of WoW.
Pretty much. I mean, just like a real quick aside, it's like, I mean, I've seen that game like ruin people's lives, so it's like, I just know it's like, it's just best to just stay completely away from that and just not risk getting sucked into the black hole that is WoW.
like I tell some of my friends on heroes, it's like, sometimes it's good to pick this hero. It's better for this particular player to play this particular hero, because what that hero does is it basically protects the player from like their worst tendencies, just the way the hero plays. That would be like, it's like I have a history of getting way into games. I don't need World of Warcraft destroying my life, so it's gonna steer clear, just enjoy it from afar. It's like, oh, looks like a great game.
Yeah.
And never get into it, because who knows how much of my life I wasted on MVC2, so I don't need another game like that.
Yeah. And I mean, same here. It's like, spent another entire night last night playing Marvel 3, so I mean.
But hey, Street Fighter 5, I played like 10 matches over 3 days.
Yeah, I mean, at least I got to play Marvel 3 instead of like waiting to try and like connect to the beta server or whatever it's going on with SF5.
I can definitely say this. I played a beta version of Street Fighter 5 with 6 characters on not what I would consider the best of circumstances, and I already enjoy that game more than Street Fighter 4. So take it as it will. I like it.
Sounds pretty good. Although if you like it more than SF4, I mean the bar is low. So
the bar is low.
You may not be saying much.
I like that game.
Yeah,
but it is what it is.
But I think I can tell that you're enjoying Street Fighter 5 a lot, given that your current like Twitter name is like one of the error codes like SF5 spits out.
Never forget 21007.
Yeah, there it is.
Anybody who on the beta, God, it's been burned into my mind, that stupid code. But
so, is there anything else tension related that you wanted to mention? Any further examples from other games? Any further HOTS matters you want to discuss?
Yeah, just one. I full disclosure, I haven't heard the intro yet, so Brad might have already given this away, and it might be subsequently edited out of the release, quote unquote. But if you want to see a perfect example of tension in a fighting game, go to YouTube and search for Evo Moment 37. That's all I got. That is it. That is like basically that's probably the watershed moment for the fighting game community.
Right, and I did not mention that in the intro, but like for those who haven't seen it, and I think most have, like basically it's an example of what we were talking about earlier, how it's like both people are kind of walking back and forth, basically afraid to commit to something because it could be counterattacked by the other person. So like basically like one person, Justin Wong, he has like considerable amount of health, like maybe 25% of his character's health left, and the other character played by Daigo has like basically a tiny bit of health left. So basically, Justin, he decides like just screw it, I'm just gonna chip him out. I'm just gonna do like a super that does chip damage, and that'll be the end of the match. Well, as it so happens, in Street Fighter 3, there is this mechanic called a parry. That's basically like when you hold forward as opposed to holding backwards to block. If you hold forward right before an attack happens, basically you parry it and you don't take any damage, and it gives you kind of the opportunity to counterattack. But it's hard to do that if the other move's like a multi-hit move, then you gotta either parry again or block. But basically, he does this like crazy super that's like really hard to parry. But Daigo, he, being the Street Fighter master that he is, he's completely ready for the moment. Justin rushes in, does a super, and Daigo parry, 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 parry. For like what seems like 20 minutes of just like doing parry, and like he's doing this all like masterfully, perfectly. Justin does the last hit of the super, parry, counterattack, KO, end of match. Crowd erupts. It's basically, and this is like one of the, the first like really big, huge Evo moments that was posted on YouTube. Mm-hmm. So like, I mean, for a lot of people, this is like their introduction to fighting games, to the point where it's like someone wrote a book about it like 10 years after the fact. But
yeah, it really is. It's just, if you've played, you've played enough, fighting games, just like, you played, hours of Street Fighter 2 against like your brother or just friends on Super Nintendo and stuff, you can appreciate it, like just how insane it's incredible.
Yeah, but it's, I mean, like you were saying, like it's such like a perfect example of like just an incredible amount of tension, because like not only like the match situation, it's like both characters, are kind of down at the end, and you're kind of like, oh my god, like do something so I could win. But it's like there's also like kind of like that meta tension, I guess. I don't know, there's a new term, but it's like, I mean, these guys are both in a tournament with hundreds and thousands of people watching, not hundreds of thousands, but hundreds or thousands of people watching, and it's like I don't know if it was like winner's bracket or loser's bracket, but if it was the loser's bracket, like, I mean, both of these people's tournament lives are on the line, and like this is like the last Evo, like until the next year, so it's like, I mean, there's just an incredible amount at stake in the match.
Well, and something that just came to mind, that it's not more relevant, but it's more recent. That's a better way of putting it. Is you'll appreciate this, the the first set of grand finals of Marvel vs. Capcom 3, Viscant versus PR Balrog.
Oh, yeah.
That is just...
So, like, insane. Are you talking about the match? I don't even know how to...
was like the Tron thing.
Yeah.
That's just... YouTube that too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like I think I remember enough of it to kind of describe it, but it's like basically, okay, so Viscant, he's the eventual winner. I'd probably just spoil the tension anyway, but I know. But basically, he's playing this character called Phoenix, and Jean Grey from the comics. But basically, it's like when you kill her and she has 5 meters, she turns into Dark Phoenix, which is like this incredibly, ridiculously overpowered. Basically, it's like you have to do all this stuff to unlock her, basically. And it's like your reward for that is like getting this incredibly powerful character, which he had at the time. And he's going up against this guy PR Balrog, who's playing this character Tronbon from Mega Man Legends, and she's not the strongest character in the game, but basically there's a point where it's like I guess it was like he was afraid to like teleport in because like Tron could have grabbed or thrown out a move and then easily comboed in, because she has stuff that like hits behind her because she's pretty dumb. But basically, so it's like he's everyone's kind of like backing off. Viscant, he super jumps, so he's like high up in the air, and so he's coming down just like afraid to hit any kind of button, and that gives PR Rog the chance to kind of get underneath her. And then as soon as Viscant lands, he does a level 3 grab. Because he was afraid to do anything, because he was afraid to hit a button, he kind of did the counter to that, which was a grab, especially a super grab, a level 3. But basically he did that and won the match and won the set because of that. So, and like that itself really like led to like all kinds of tension beyond that, because like. Okay, so like Viscant had won winners finals, so it was like these tournaments are basically double elimination. So it was like, when grand final starts, one person's coming from the winners bracket, one person's coming from the losers bracket. The person coming from the losers bracket has to win 2 consecutive sets, whereas the person coming from winners only has to win 1. So it was like basically that was like a reset. It's like a PR Rog had won the first set, so it was like, oh my god, now it's like. is Viscant going to win 2 sets? Is there going to be that complete reversal? Is there going to be, like a huge upset going on here? So, it's like the players are nervous. It's looking like there's a momentum swing, and it was just really crazy.
Yeah, the biggest takeaway that you have to remember from those two moments that we were talking about, fighting game wise, is they weren't the last match in that set. Like they had to continue going.
Right.
So it's very much totally like, oh my God, like I just got destroyed. It's like by one of the craziest things in the world, and like you have to recover from that.
Oh yeah.
Or you're just done.
Right.
And Viscant was able to recover from like this crazy.
Much to his credit, I didn't think he'd be able to, but he did.
Justin wasn't.
Right.
But, Justin isn't as good at that game as Daigo was either, to be fair. Right. But yeah, I mean, it's the tension, in a set especially is like, the strongest competitors can just, shake it off. Like it's like a closer in baseball. It's just like, yeah, I blew the last game. Yeah. Forget about it. Just keep going.
It's like you have to have amnesia to.
Yep, very much so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's those two, are very much fighting game examples that immediately come to mind that are pretty obvious.
Yeah, and just to touch real quickly on like a sports example, it's like, a lot of tension comes from what you have invested, and like also the amount of time kind of committed to something. So it's like if you're a game, like the exact same situation, like early in a season, like same score and whatnot, it's very different from something late in the season where like you're in the middle of like a playoff run. It's like there's so much more at stake. You've spent so much more time. You have so much more time invested in what you're doing in the season and what you're going for. So it's, I mean, these kinds of things, like they happen like all through in all walks of life. Not just entertainment, but sports and all that.
A relevant example, considering what day and stuff we're recording, like the Astros and Angels are playing for first place in the division that they both share. And, these games mean more, there's more, like, I'm an Astros fan all my life, and, these games are much more tense, and I care much more about the outcome of these games than I did, a month into the season. Because they mean more standings.
And also, like, it's like one of the things that, like baseball and other sports have done to kind of create more tension, kind of like the later in the season. It's like add more playoff spots, which means that like more teams are kind of vying for spots. Whereas like, when there were fewer spots available, it's like that means that more teams were more prone to, give up and throw in the towel and actually, actually be mathematically eliminated earlier. So, this kind of keeps more teams in the race, which, adds more drama and tension, and it's better overall.
Yep, it's a better, product for the customer, consumer, I want to say, so.
Which is what it's all about. So.
That's right, money. Yeah. Gotta get that paper.
So, as I mentioned in the intro, I have since checked the game out. Probably a little bit too much, but you know what? I'm having a lot of fun with it. I can definitely confirm everything he had to say. Please get rid of Nova Blizzard, please! But all in all, it's a very tense game. It's very fun, very strategic, and I encourage people to check it out. It is free, so what do you have to lose? Anyway, the music is from Heroes of the Storm, obviously, because that's what we're talking about. Anyway, if you have any comments or questions on this week's episode, go ahead and leave those on our YouTube channel. Really need to get a Facebook page for this thing set up at some point, but anyway, until next time, I will talk to you guys later. Bye.